you know, this is a topic that's really hard to hear, and so it's not the easiest topic to learn from, but I'm grateful to share the message with you. I'm grateful to share the message with you. So I'm here on behalf of the Samaritan Women, and we are a long-term program. It's between 2 to 4 years for women that have been human trafficked, and so they come to restore their lives at the Samaritan Women. And I will tell you that we're going to go into some pretty difficult topics, but I'd love it to be more of a dialogue. So if you have questions, raise your hands or just shout it out. Let's just be casual about this, okay? Before I begin, I want to hear, has anybody heard about human trafficking? What have you heard?
A whole lot.
A whole lot? Tell me.
How guys go to dominating, and it's not just men doing it, it's women too. Friending these young girls, letting them stay with them, and then the next thing you know, they got them doing different things.
Yep.
You know, it's terrible.
Yep.
And we've seen a documentary at the, was it St. Hospital or something down here?
Yes, with Deneen Yates.
We've seen that documentary and it made me cry because I think the youngest one on it was like 10 years old. She was leaving her house. She missed her bus and a guy picked her up. And she, you know, she wasn't even out on the street. She had just missed her bus. And, you know, and a lot of the girls just, they try to get away from it, but they just get sucked back in.
Yeah, yeah.
with a lot
I've heard
of
that
folks.
Baltimore is one of the largest cities involved in human trafficking.
It is one of the most profitable cities.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the most profitable cities. So you've got New York, you've got LA, and Chicago, and then Baltimore. The Baltimore DC area is ranked 4th and the most profitable. Yeah. Who else? I saw someone. Oh, you got another one. Go
I
ahead.
was working with a man one time who was on an airplane. They were going to Myanmar and Vietnam.
Mhm.
The man was going over, he was a pedophile,
Mhm.
and he was going over there because he could find young children.
Yep. It's disgusting. Yeah.
Yes, I just seen on Facebook the other day that, I think in this area there was a white van going around, trying to pick up little girls.
I'm sure.
What y'all think about the clowns?
Ah!
Oh, the clown, yeah.
I
The
told y'all
clowns in
that's
South
why-
Carolina that are trying to lure the kids into the woods with money.
Yeah.
They're in Fayetteville too,
Yeah.
North Carolina.
So with this presentation, I'm going to get a little technical in the beginning, and we're going to start at a really big global perspective, and then we're going to work our way down to the local level, okay, so you can see where it's going. So what you see here, this is the federal definition of what they call human trafficking. And it's important to understand that this is the federal definition because the way that each level of government views trafficking determines how the victim is treated. So a few things I want to point out about this. You don't need to read the whole thing. You know, government people, they just like to add a bunch of words. So forget that. I just want to point out that in order to prove that someone was a human trafficking victim, you have to prove that there was some type of force. So that's kind of like what you talked about, like the girl being kidnapped off the streets, you know, it's the violent piece of it, they're forced to do it. But the other methods that could be considered trafficking could be fraud. And so an example of this, which I'll go into more detail with the presentation, but it's called the boyfriend method, where typically there's like a 6 to 8 month grooming period, and she really thinks that this is a legitimate romantic relationship, and that her working for him is to build a family and a life. And then there's coercion. What that is basically, if you think of the term blackmail. And so what we've seen is girls are being drugged, they're passed out, they're raped or sexually assaulted, it's videotaped, pictures are taken. When she sobers up, they show her the pictures and the video, and they say, if you don't work for me, I'm going to show this to your mom, I'm going to show this to your grandma, and everybody's going to know that you're just a whore. Okay? What's that?
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a lifetime movie, a lot of lifetime movies.
Yeah, it does.
She was involved with that,
Yeah.
and her sister and her ex-boyfriend had to figure out a way to get in the house, get her out of the situation. It was very dangerous, but they did somehow. The family was so happy that they got it in and made it, you know, because this person, her ex, knew these people, and they knew that, you know, twin, she was a twin, and the twin was the opposite from this one.
Yeah.
But thank God, and she kind of changed her life around, but she was through a big ordeal.
That's tough. Another thing I want to point out, again, this is a federal definition, is that in order to prove that there was force, fraud, or coercion, you have to be 18 or older. What that means is, from a federal perspective, there's no such thing as child prostitution. So if a girl is picked up off the streets for being prostituted and she is 17, 16, or however young, she's automatically viewed as a victim. She cannot say, this was my choice, I wanted to be prostituted, because there's no such thing as child prostitution. That's federally. Now, any of you that have been out there on Wilkins Avenue or the hot spots, know that there is young girls out there. And in the state of Maryland, Maryland cannot decide what the age limit should be in our state. And so we're still prosecuting young girls as young as 12, 14, 16 years old.
They're 12.
Right. And so what's happening is, if you are picked up by a federal officer, you are viewed as a victim and you are treated as such, right? You get all of the help and the medication, everything you need, you get treated as a victim. If you're picked up by a local police officer, you're treated as a criminal and it'll be on your record for the rest of your life. Same girl, very different situations. Go ahead. All right, so let's talk about what is human trafficking and what does that look like. The three main forms of trafficking that you're going to see throughout the world. You have the most common form that you can think, and it's modern day slavery. Who here has heard of the term fair trade? Has anybody seen that? You might have seen it like on chocolate or coffee. Does anybody understand what it is?
They trade
They
goods
trade,
from workers.
I think there's.
It is fair. Yeah.
They trade like, for something. You
Close. Yeah, close. So what?
Honest wage for day labor would be an
Yes.
example.
So what it means is that company has been, they can put the fair trade logo on their product because they have certified that where they're getting their product. So let's take coffee for example, because in Africa, the majority of coffee that we drink, including what you're drinking now, is actually farmed by child slave laborers.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
No one more coffee.
The majority of chocolate that we buy here in the United States, including all chocolate made by Hershey, all chocolate made by Nestle, is made primarily by child slave labor. And so the importance of when you buy products and it has that little emblem on it that says fair trade, that means that it's not by slave labor, it is actually being farmed by a farmer that pays their workers. And it's
Hershey
certified.
bars are now made in Mexico.
Well, Hershey has said that they're going to try to be slave-free by 2025.
It's from her.
Try to be slave free. I don't want no more Hershey. Or coffee. Go to Pepsi.
And then what we work mostly at the Samaritan Women is child exploitation. This is the fastest growing form of human trafficking in the world. The demand for young girls especially, but boys as well, is growing so fast nobody can even keep up with it. And then at the Samaritan Women, we work with women who were forced into prostitution. Okay? Go ahead. All right, the scope of the problem. I know there's a bunch of words. You can read them if you want, but I'm going to go over it for you. I'll tell you that it is a difficult crime to measure because it's kind of like domestic violence. When do you start counting it? Does domestic violence start counting if he pushes her against the wall? Is that domestic violence? Or is it if he punches the wall right next to her head? When do you start counting? So when do you start counting human trafficking? Because if she's just doing her boyfriend a favor because they need to pay the cell phone bill, does that count as human trafficking? Well, I think so too. But it's really difficult to count because most victims don't come out and say, hey, I'm a trafficking victim, can you take my stats in your national study? It's not happening. So it's difficult to measure.
Can we get her to
I'll tell
stop
you that it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Oh, do you need to take a break?
No, I
Yes,
gotta
sorry, yes.
reposition.